So today, not so many people are reading newspapers, watching television newscasts. We're using our phones, tablets, computers. We're accessing news all the time. And this is because of these new emerging technologies. Well, they're now more than emerging. We've had them for years, but they're still new, especially to people working in the field of journalism. So what I do at BuzzFeed is work in their Open Lab, which is basically an R&D lab based here in San Francisco. And I was the first fellow brought on. And what I'm specifically doing is exploring new ways of telling stories using all these new tools that are available. But it all got started when I was 3 years old. And I'm going to infuse my presentation with brief little anecdotes because there's kind of a pattern here. And it came up with the earlier speakers as well, which is that when I was 3, I loved reading National Geographic Explorer. I loved, well, the television show National Geographic Explorer, the magazine National Geographic. I would sit on the couch for sometimes 2-3 hours. And this is stories that my parents, family, friends have told me recently, which kind of confirms what I'm doing in a way. I would sit there looking at maps, gazetteers, and I had a Casio Rapman keyboard, and I would listen to rap beats, essentially, that were programmed into my keyboard. So electronic dance music has factored into my life for many, many years. But this is what I did when I was very young. And this is what I've sort of evolved out of. So today, well, oh yeah, and then there's the hot tub too. So we had a hot tub growing up. And when I was 4, I would spend most of my time underwater with Legos, with submarines, with plastic whales. I was pretending that I was in the Amazon, that I was in the ocean, that I was doing my own exploration just in the tub. And occasionally I would come up and I would tell my dad, imagine we're in a canoe floating down the Amazon, right? And again, National Geographic, that's what I was into. But this has all evolved into what I'm doing today, which is stuff like this. So I've been working with journalists around the world prior to coming to BuzzFeed, covering sports, soccer, rally racing in East Africa, working with CCTV News out of Nairobi, doing wildlife conservation stories, working with the African Wildlife Foundation out of Nairobi, flying around groups of safaris, going to Victoria Falls in Zambia, going to amazing places that I looked at as photographs in National Geographic. And now I'm living this sort of dream, flying over wildebeest herds in the Serengeti. But I'm doing it to share these stories, to share these places, these animals, what's going on here. These herds of sort of cellular wildebeests flowing as they travel through the Serengeti during their Great Migration. And so much of my work has been exposing these spaces from the perspective of the drone. So flying cameras around the heads of giraffes. This specific video clip I showed to a safari guide, and he said, I've been working in the industry for 20 years. I've seen countless photographs, countless videos of giraffes, but I've never seen a giraffe like that. And it felt like seeing a giraffe for the first time. Hey, that's the drone for you. It can show the world in amazing ways. So for my storytelling with these emerging technologies, a lot of the work has been with drones. I'm doing aerial videography, photography, 3D reconstructions, working with virtual reality and 360-degree video. I'm interested in using technology to take people places, especially places where they cannot go. So I got started in the drone journalism lab at the University of Nebraska. As a student, I realized the greatest part of getting a college degree is the time that you spend outside of class with professors talking about ideas, sitting in their office, talking about what you're interested in. And if you're taking their classes, odds are there's some overlap there. So milk that as much as you can. The drone journalism lab was started by a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who just happened to be my professor. And he had this idea in 2011 when the very first consumer drones became available. He thought, well, we could use these for telling stories in the context of journalism. And he started the Drone Journalism Lab, which was the world's first drone journalism program, either in commercial journalism or in an academic context. And for me, it was perfect, because it was this bringing together of being able to explore the world, make machines. We were building drones back then, storytelling, and also problem solving. We quickly got shut down by the FAA because of drone regulations in this country, so I went abroad. I started doing work in India, traveling around with a drone, taking photographs of places that I went. This is one of my favorite photographs, I think, ever, just because of that scale of the boats going out to sea at low tide. I was actually there working on a Fulbright documentary with my father. We were doing a film about the wedding marching bands, and so we were working outside. I thought, I'll bring a drone along, and we can capture these wedding bands, these little mini parades from the air. And I love this guy who's smiling and looking up at the drone, and it's just, I love this image. And then, of course, the groom on the horse, you can't even tell he's there, but he's under pounds of flowers. Cricket, again, the perspective of the drone. We have the players here, but if you ask me what's most interesting about this photograph, it's these shadows. It's a completely different way of looking at the game of cricket, in this case. Working for the Times of India a little bit, covering some of their football or soccer coverage. I even became a part of the news, which tends to happen sometimes when I'm working on these projects, but always working with people on the ground there. I'm always working with the journalists in Nairobi, working with the journalists in India. I'm never parachuting in with these, fancy kind of magical tools and doing my own thing. It's always a collaboration because, as the previous speaker mentioned in the video, there's this element of Westerners dropping in and sort of acting as imperialists, even with if it's just with these tools, with these modern technologies that we have access to, but perhaps the people in these places we go to don't. So on that note, I went to Nairobi and began working with journalists there as well, working with African skyCAM. And unlike with the Drone Journalism Lab, this was based in commercial journalism. So National Geographic, I haven't worked with National Geographic, but I'm doing work that clearly connects to what I was into when I was 3. And I've worked with a number of organizations just in the past few years, and really have been able to bring these tools out and to show journalists how they can be used. So moving away from aerial video, one of the projects, kind of a sandbox project where I do a lot of experimentation, takes place in Turkey, working with archaeologists. I've been creating 3D reconstructions of archaeological sites for their own archival purposes, but also as a storytelling tool to share these places, these spaces with people who cannot visit Antiochia ad Cragum. That was a 3D reconstruction right there. This here is a head of Medusa. So again, storytelling, playing around with 3D reconstruction, reconstructing real spaces, real objects like this Medusa head, and there's a toothbrush for scale there. But there's a lot you can do with this content. So it's great for journalists because I can take these 3D environments, these reconstructions, I can drop them into Facebook, I can share them with people, you can access these models on your phone. And down here, if you want to play with these reconstructions, it's sketchfab.com/Ben Kreimer. And I'll put a link to my website at the end here, so you can, at the end of the presentation, if you want to play around with these 3D environments. But there's also the VR, the virtual reality element too. So this right here is a video clip from an HTC Vive VR headset where the wearer is basically walking around the archaeological dig. Now, you could do this kind of project in any space. We could create a 3D reconstruction of this auditorium, and you could walk around it virtually if you wanted to. So this is what's possible now, and this was done using, well, the images were taken using a very small drone, DJI Phantom 3. I wouldn't be surprised if people in here have Phantoms. They're kind of the ubiquitous, the common white drone. So the technology is not that complex. It's not that expensive. You just have to play around and realize, you can do that. You can create a VR environment using photos taken by a toy drone, which costs $900. I mean, this is fun stuff. And this photo was taken at that archaeological dig. Another project. So archaeology is great, but what about journalism? How can these tools and these processes fit into the context of actual journalism? One project that I did back in 2014, after I started playing around with 3D reconstruction, took place in Nairobi, so African skyCAM. I was working on a story, along with a reporter, about people who survive off of the trash that they find in Nairobi's Dandora dump, which is a giant landfill, as you can see, a giant landfill that supports a slum that surrounds the landfill. It's about 1 kilometer long. And you can see there's some trucks here in the middle, and there are people around there. You can't really see them, but they're digging through the trash, and they will be selling what it is that they find. This here is a 3D reconstruction of the landfill. And so this is actually a screen recording from within the browser. So again, these 3D models are very easy to share. So here I am basically flying around the landfill. You can see the canyons of trash. Flying over here, I've added annotations so I can point out easily, oh, there's a school there, an elementary school that borders the landfill with just a wall that separates it. Now the great thing about 3D reconstructions, say, in comparison to video, is it gives the user the ability to explore and to figure out for themselves, what's a space like? Because if you're just watching a video, I'm just showing you, and you're only seeing what the producer of the video, wanted you to see. And so that element of exploration and giving people the power to explore is kind of a new idea in the context of journalism, where before, and still today, I mean, you're watching videos, you're reading articles that have been highly produced. Now, I'm reconstructing an entire space and basically giving it to you. It's kind of like a video game saying, here you go, check it out for yourself. And so it really enables spatial storytelling. It brings the possibilities for spatial storytelling, for adding that spatial context to stories. You can do this in new ways that were not possible before. And going back to when I was 3 and I was reading gazetteers and maps, I loved the idea when I was 3 of imagining what it was like in the mountains, reading the topographic maps, understanding the contours, and imagining what it was like to be there. And so there's a connection here. 360 video is related to this element and this idea of spatial storytelling. And of course, I've been playing around with drones. And this is some of my BuzzFeed work here. Figuring out where can 360-degree cameras go. And if you're not familiar with 360 videos, basically, it's a video that you should watch on your phone and as you move, or your tablet. And as you move your device around, you're looking around within a 360-degree sphere. So again, it gives the viewer the ability to do exploration. And although there are certain confines, obviously it's still video, it's a linear timeline, but there's that element of being able to do exploration on your own. And also, to put cameras in interesting places. So for example, that helmet that you just saw is a snowboard helmet, which has 2 cameras on the back and the front. What you get in the end is something like this. So again, this is a screen recording of me playing with the video on my computer. But basically, I'm capturing everything around me. And it kind of cuts my body in an awkward way, but that's okay, because a lot of the work that I do at BuzzFeed and outside of BuzzFeed is very experimental and playing with how we can use these tools, even if maybe in the end this specific tool doesn't work quite like we would like it to. But this lets you kind of do a super, GoPro video where you can actually look around the person instead of just what they're looking at. On drones, I've been doing the same kind of thing. So obviously, I think drones are a great way to explore spaces and to capture aerial visuals. So I've taken cameras that I've modified, the GoPro cameras actually, swapped out the lenses, and I've put in 220-degree field of view lenses, which basically means when the cameras are spaced out like this, with one camera on top and one camera on the bottom of the drone, they can create a 360-degree video sphere. So I can shoot that kind of 360 video using just 2 modified GoPro cameras. And in the slide before with the helmet, those were Kodak, believe it or not, Kodak-branded cameras. But they also had those same super fisheye lenses. So basically, what you get in the end is video like this, where the drone actually disappears. This was shot over at off the coast of Pacifica, where there's this coastline that's eroding these apartments. Nobody's allowed to go inside because the cliff's basically falling away and taking the apartments along with them. But in the end, you have this sort of, it's kind of like this magical camera platform where you can't see the camera, you can't see the drone, but there you are in space, floating above the cliff. And again, I'm using off-the-shelf hardware to do this, so nothing too fancy or complicated or too expensive. So again, with 360 video, I'm bringing media consumers, users, people interested in a story into the space. I want to take people places. And there's the whole, if you're interested in virtual reality, you have the Oculus Rift, you have the HTC Vive, but few people actually have those headsets. So right now, really what we're focusing on at BuzzFeed is the mobile device. So doing VR content, 360 video that anybody here who has a smartphone can access. What this says down here is technology can take you places. It's taken me places, and I want to take everybody else to these interesting, these perhaps vanishing spaces. I want to share the world with people who, for one reason or another, cannot actually get out to these places that I'm able to go as a journalist, as a storyteller, and working with journalists on the ground. As for the Casio Ratman, this has actually played an interesting role in my life, not specifically this keyboard, but before the age of 23, I'm 27 now, before the age of 23, I DJ'd obviously in the US, but also China, Sri Lanka, as well as India, and did music festivals around this country, so I love electronic dance music. So if you're ever feeling lost in life and don't know what you should be doing, think back to when you were 3. Don't think about what you wanted to be when you grew up. I wanted to be a farmer. I'm from Nebraska. But this stuff, these, reading National Geographic, listening to my Casio Ratman keyboard when I was 3, those pieces of my childhood continue to influence what I'm doing today when it comes to exploring, my professional work, and my passion. So that's my story. And if anybody has, because I work collaboratively with people, I love talking about these ideas and these tools, which is what all this stuff is, get in touch. I'd love to hear your ideas. If you have projects, let me know. Thanks.